Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final reading in the Fierce Flower reading this semester. My name is Lauren Elaine, and I am the Executive Director of the Fierce Flower Poetry Center. I want to welcome you, our wonderful live audience. Please give yourselves a round of applause for being here. Get your life right with some poetry this evening, and welcome again to our online audience joining us on Facebook Live. Thank you for tuning in. I want to say to the online audience, we will be acting out here in person, clapping and snapping, so feel free to enact in the chat. Be bountiful with your emojis and comments. We will keep track of those later. We think that you are with us, so please be with us. I want to introduce Fierce Flower for those of you who don't know. This is the nation's first academic center dedicated to Black poetry. Fierce Flower was conceptualized and implemented by our very own Dr. Joanne Gavin, who is with us. And you might recognize her name from that, fancy building on the quad, Gavin Hall. Yeah, she's amazing like that. Fierce Flower began as a conference celebrating Black poets and Black poetry in 1994. A second conference was held in 2004 because it was that nice, so we did it twice. After which JMU said, let's make this official, put a ring on it, charter the center in 2005. The center's mission is to ensure the visibility, inclusion, and critical consideration of Black poets in American letters, as well as in a whole range of educational curricula, to cultivate appreciation for poetry. Students here? Raise your hand, shake your leg. Yep. We are cultivating you. Welcome. To support and promote poets at all stages of their careers and to preserve the history of Black poets for future generations. I want to shout out our friends at the libraries who are helping us with that situation. And again, our slogan is celebrate, educate, preserve, right? That is what we do. Our programs include seminars, workshops, our flagship every 10-year conference. Yes, there was another one in 2014, which means the next one is happening in 2024. Mark your calendars, it's happening. So, follow us on social media to see all what we're up to, and yes, that's my spiel. I'm really excited tonight to introduce our reader, our very own Renée. I say our very own because she is the assistant director of the Fierce Flower Poetry Center and an assistant professor in the English department here at JMU. But really, what I mean by our own is that already, even though she's only been here for 2.5 months, her light and her laughter, her incredible fashion sense, her brilliance and her kindness all of it has already made her and just a wonderful member of our community, truly invaluable. So she's ours, we claim her. And I'm so excited that she's reading for us tonight. Elle came to us from Indiana University, where she earned her MFA in creative writing and served as assistant director of the Indiana University Writers Conference. Prior to that, she earned an MS in journalism from Columbia University and had a successful career in journalism, working at newsrooms in Chicago and New York before casting her lot in with the poets. This was a very good decision, not just for us, but for Elle, who is an award-winning poet and nonfiction writer. Her work has been published in Obsidian, Tin House, Poetry Northwest, the Minnesota Review, and other wonderful venues. She's been nominated for Best New Poets, Best of the Net, a Pushcart Prize, all of very fancy things, but she's won multiple prestigious awards, such as the Indiana University Guy Lemon Award for Public Writing, the Appalachian Review's Denny C. Plattner Award, and most recently, and excitingly, the 2022 Rattle Poetry Prize. Now what that means is, her poem was selected from 15,000 other poems as the winner. Okay, 15 from 4,010 international poets. I'm just saying, you have a 1 in 15,000 poets reading to you tonight. Let's hear it. All right. Elle identifies as the granddaughter of proud Black Appalachians. Her work is informed by archival research and oral histories. Her manuscript in progress is entitled The Dust Still Sings, Black Appalachian Inheritances. Elle's poems, as we will hear this evening, are both muscular and finely wrought. Here is a marriage of wisdom and craft, of unflinching witness and incredible tenderness, of the incontrovertible fact and essential imagining that poets must do. Join me in giving a proper JMU Furious Flower welcome to Renée.
Gotta hide the water cup because I'm gonna need that. Oh, and the
There's
timer.
a logo, you can put it up top.
Okay. I'm so delighted to be here with y'all today. Like, my heart is so full, and I'm gonna try, like, not to be the emo poet, but no guarantees. Okay, I can't guarantee that to anyone here. It means so much to be able to gather with people who are interested in poetry, who people are like, look, I just want to put my name down on the list, teacher. Like, that's okay, you're here. And I'm really grateful that you're here. I want to start off with just a few thank yous. I have to thank our talented, tremendous Furious Flower poetry team. Can we just, like, give it up for... like all things social tech, saved my life today. Lauren is just tremendous with your support and your care and welcoming me here to JMU, and it has meant so much. I'm not going to labor on that because I'm going to get email again, okay? And Dr. Gavin, I mean, you already know, founding director, how rare it is to have an institution like this with a founding director who is still with us. It's very, very rare, and we're so grateful for your vision and the groundwork that you laid to create a space for celebrating and educating and preserving all Black poets at every stage of their journey, right? Not just the illustrious, right, but the up-and-comers, because we need that. We need those spaces. So grateful for you. And I really want to also thank all of the JMU English department colleagues who are here. I appreciate y'all so much. My wonderful Cal colleagues, and of course, libraries. So I'm just grateful that everyone has come out to support. I'm going to read some poems from my manuscript, as Lauren mentioned, which is called And the Dust Still Sings, Black Appalachian Inheritances. And so this manuscript documents and transmits the experiences of my maternal ancestors from the tobacco fields of Southwest Virginia to the coal mines of Southern West Virginia during the 19th and 20th centuries. So my work fuses elements of the creative as well as the historical to reveal what is held by and what is missing from archives. So things such as, let's see if this works. Let's see if we're doing it. Oh, that's me. Okay, yes. Things like this. Can y'all see? Is my head in the way? Okay. So this is my family. These two at the bottom are my grandparents. This is at their 50th wedding anniversary. And all those folk in the back are children. Children in my family. So we had about 10 in my family in total. And fun fact, my grandparents were only children, so there's a little note in my family that they must have been really lonely to have children. Next, this is another picture from our archive of the cutting of the cake. And I always talk to students about what photos can reveal. This photo in particular was very interested at who was leading the cake cutting, and it was not. That's all I'm going to say on that. This is a photograph of the 1939 ID card that my grandfather carried with him into the coal mines. It was something that all coal miners had to carry with them in case of the need to identify who they were, which unfortunately happened with some great regularity. This is really, really, really special to have, and I don't know who has kept this since 1944, but someone in my family did. And these are the total wages that my grandfather earned at Gillum Coal and Coke Mine, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, during his employment there. And then I have other things from the archives. So we think about photographs, we think about documents, but then we have these tangible things, right? And so I'm grateful that my family has held on for generations this family Bible. Someone did kind of ant job at preserving it because masking tape. But it's here, we have it, and it has beautiful gems that I've come to find, such as lots of hair. So we have a tradition in my family that the women cut their hair based on the moon cycle. And so to be able to look at something like this and find something like that was tremendous to me. And different textures, braids, we got braids in there too. So how amazing and just special to have those things. So I'm just gonna put this out there to our students who are in the room, right? You don't have to only go to libraries to access archives. You have them with your family members in your homes, with recipes, right, with things that have been handed down. And someone like me, who you may never ever get to meet, might be looking at them years and years later. So think about what's precious and what's valuable to hold on to. That'll be my only little message for that. Okay, now how do I turn this off, y'all? Bless, because tech love, appreciate you. So I'm gonna start by reading a poem that really talks a lot about my obsession. Sometimes I feel like when I'm going back in the past and I'm trying to access these archival records and my family's records, sometimes it feels like I'm feasting on dead bones. So it feels a little gruesome to me, and certain things I find have been surprising and really hard to stomach. So this poem hints at that. Okay. This is called, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Some nights we have the moon. There are no swans here, just corn and potatoes pushing past small town dirt. I want to be done with want, so I tell my feet to stalk the wheat swaying at the edge of a field, past the silos and sides, past the scaffolding of the barn's ash skeleton, where old man Blue hung himself after rows of turnips refused to grain. Sometimes a person can have their fill of loneliness. Desire is a tick that hides on my haunches until the bite pulses its red district light, needling my already silly goose pimpled flesh, knees swelling like interminable hurricane water. When I float inside night's shade, I try not to think of the wreath of flies that line his neck, how breath left with a tawdry grunt, but the stench of death stayed salty in my mouth, and I liked it. Can blood cover shame? The old man wouldn't want his good church friends to find him swaying like that from the rafters. So I cut the rope, watched the body land like some beach star, five-pointed, with arms and legs spread, the head bled into a perfect circle. I let the wolf of me spread out and howl full-throated at the pearl and ink clouds, the incessant incandescence, my back lit by air's black thicket. I shouldn't say what happened next, how 1,000 centipedes squirm beneath my skin, how tufts of fur emerge from my pores, how I bristled like a corn husk crushed under a boot. I shouldn't say my teeth knew exactly what to do with their new pointy tips, how top incisors tore into his flesh as any country girl would a waxy plum, careful not to let the jaw loosen too wide and waste the tart juice jolt a tongue longs for. It is easy to suck clean the marrow. For many, man's flimsy bones, gristle ultimately gives, mixes saliva into a powdery broth, some succor to sweeten sorrow's bitter crop. I can't tell you why the moon reminds me of empty seats, of all who have left us. I can't tell you why I can't let my dead rest, why I've always savored their carcasses. I have never been whole, so there's room. This next poem I'm going to read, I was really excited that it was published in Poetry Northwest and selected by Kwame Dawes to be included in American Life and Poetry, and was also turned into a broadside of our Lyle Harris's class, along with my beautiful, beautiful, illustrious director. So we were able to see how students interpreted the work and made art from it, which was really an amazing experience. This poem is called Mend. My mama had the gift of hand sewing, one perfect stitch after another perfect stitch, eyeballing the precise length of thread needed to repair what had ripped a gaping hole, unmaking the whole swath of cotton polyester fabric she draped across her delicate bony shoulders before a night out with my father. Painting the town red, she said of those early days when he handed her his fat quarters, hoping there would be enough to make something beautiful, like the outfit she sewed. Plaid culottes with matching vests, paisley dresses, fringed halters. She tells me this while I watch the needle bully a ruby rivulet from her thumb, selling the myth of cotton without the blood when she tries to mend my middle school uniform skirt. A navy pleat I never noticed had been stretched and split. So that poem, fat quarters, I should have said, is a sewing term. And so it scraps, right? And so I was thinking about how do I talk about a missing parent who did maybe have all of these aspirations and tried to give all that he had, but it still wasn't enough to make anything with, right? So I should have probably said that first, but there's that. So a lot of my work, as I said, is influenced by genealogical records and the archive, and my family's archive, and actual going to archives around Virginia. And so I was talking about in the first two poems a little bit about wholeness and emptiness, right? And so one of the things that I was trying to do was learn about the people who I descend from, and to learn how they survived, right? How they persisted through so many things, so I could even be made. Like what were their lives like? So I started doing this research actually when I was an undergraduate at Roanoke College down the road in Salem, Virginia. And I had gotten a grant my junior year of undergrad to do this work, and it's been an obsession ever since. So you never know when y'all apply to stuff where it might lead you. So I've been working with this librarian in this small library in Virginia, trying to track this one ancestor, and I found a bunch of records that all corroborated a family story, that people in my family were telling me this particular relative seemed more like a sister to her eldest daughter than her mother. And that was kind of family lore, and these various sets of records indicated why that might be. So, hold on, let me take a sip. It's water, y'all, it's water. And so at the same time I was doing this work, I was at a lovely conference, the Minnesota Northwoods Writers Conference, which is a great place, beautiful place for people to be. And there were all of these mayfly bodies. Anybody know what mayflies are? Yeah, okay, so you know. Okay, so you'll hear a little bit about mayflies in this poem, and it felt like a place to ground what I was grappling with. Genealogical trip to Pulaski, Virginia. The mayfly swarm undulates like the perfect hip roll. Mottled bodies plow brown bodies midair. Wings fade as fine gossamer in June sun, buoyed by a buzz too quick to be caught by my eye, which doesn't want to bear the witnessing. How nature persists in getting on with it publicly. Life, sex, death in the span of a day. I turn away, overcome by shame. I look through my Ford's cracked glass at white mile markers blurring a black highway. Why does our making always begin in denial? When I find my great-great-grandmother, Frances Houndshell, in census records, branded mulatto, and a mother at age 9, I do not wince. I practice numbness, focus only on getting back to the alpha mama who owned her own body, her own name, somewhere off the coast of Ghana or Nigeria maybe, where her breath, not her sweat, was enough currency. In Virginia, it's common to see the dead, mayflies skip across pavement like flat rocks tossed side-armed at a stream's surface, then lodged in sidewalk cracks among orphan pebbles, sticks, and sprigs of grass. I'd rather look at uncountable rows of tobacco leaves, which leave me breathless, dizzy even. All those green ears flap like an elephant's hello, hang woody scents heavy through my car vents like next of kin hugs, hugged only at family reunions. In death, female mayfly lips freeze into an O, as if readying a whistle, as if leaving evidence of no. After the males give chase, grab their tiny legs, drag them to the ground. After the mount, it happens like this. Whole lives purposed for labor and procreation. Night collects her bounty. By daybreak, bodies pile by the hundreds on windowsills and porch corners. In the middle of a passage, pedestrians stroll between a jail and courthouse. The nice white genealogist at the local library tells me Frances's age must be wrong, an error in reporting. But I know a nymph can be snatched from her skin, molt and molt, until she becomes something new, gains wings, if only for a brief view of the dust she will soon call home. So unfortunately, in the work that I'm doing, I find patterns that exist across generations, and this is one such pattern. I'm going to give a little trigger because this is going to be a hard poem, so take care of yourselves the way you need to. But I think it's important that we tell the truth, and we tell the truth in these spaces where so many of you are encountering and trying to make really important decisions about what happens next. And we talk a lot about consent, and that's great. But that wasn't something that was always talked a lot about. So, this poem was published in the Minnesota Review, and it feels like a companion to what preceded it. Sweets. The boy was my friend. We were supposed to go to the movies, but what he wanted to see started after my curfew. I had a curfew to keep me safe. I should have went home early. Instead, we went to his home. His mom would be home. We could watch a movie there. I thought I'd be safe. His TV VCR was in the basement. It wasn't finished. The boy, the basement. I could see the anatomy of drywall. Not yet walls that would soon see my anatomy. The pink a bit. The insulation was fluffy, like cotton candy. I loved cotton candy. I'd stuff mounds of it in my mouth, in my 11-year-old mouth, unable to stop until I puked. I loved how it melted, the alchemy, the feel of a solid thing becoming not a solid thing. At 16, I learned what it was to become not solid. How quickly pen limbs betray you, liquefy, when violence is stuffed inside the pink of you, the way it expands and melts but doesn't go away, the crystalline residue. The boy has never gone away. He was my first friend. He wasn't. Stuffed my screams with a cotton candy pink pillow. I now know nothing good comes from a thing unfinished. A movie, a boy, a basement, a hunger so sickening you might mistake it for a sweet tooth. Now let's take a collective breath. Ooh, yes. One more. Yeah, heavy things. The archive reflecting parts of your life back to you. Right? But we're gonna move higher now. Let's do that. Okay. So one of the things I really love about my family is that we get together and we have a really great and like music, dance parties, food parties. Like that was the hallmark of my childhood. And so there's this song. Okay, now I know y'all who were born when y'all were born may not know this song. So I'm gonna tell you, take out your phones, write it down, because it's a vibe. It's a vibe, and I want you to catch my vibe after this. When you go back to the dorm, you're gonna turn it on, and people are gonna be like, what the what? And you're gonna say, Elle sent this to me. Okay, all right. So the song is by this singer called Luther Vandross. Oh, we know. Luther? All right, we know. Okay. And it's a song that is called Bad Boy Having a Party. Bad Boy Having a Party. Okay, phones, Bad Boy Having a Party. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna give you anything else with that one. So that song is referenced in this poem, and also a card game. Anybody play spades? Yes. Oh, yes. All right. Okay, we know who the partner in spades is me. All right. Well, there's another card game that my family plays called Bid Whiz. Anybody?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Come on. Okay. We got one person in the house. All right. So it's an old school game, and it's a kind of akin to spades, but better. So ask your elders about that one. So that's referenced in this poem. This poem is called Fish Fry. Oh yeah. Fish fry. Everything delicious is served on Friday. Jesus should get a do-over for the Last Supper, since he missed out on the miracle that is Wonder Bread made paste by purchased cornmeal skin, sweating Crisco, clinging like faith to a mouse roof. Even as the tongue tries to negotiate release, swap freedom for teeth, we know what delay tastes like. We have waited for a check that affords us this feast of fish, golden crisp, and the glow of black joy. With Luther Vandross praising us for being bad on Aunt Mary's 45 spinner, who would call this dinner? Stovetops bubble with pots of kale and collards, made sides only by smoked ham hock oozing, salty fat, their doneness determined by Mama Joyce, who dips her too blessed to be stressed mug in the pot liquor and sips slowly, purses her lush lips and declares, "They got more mail to do. Ain't that true for all of us?" She snorts every time old Russell comes by to kiss her highest cheekbone. His jeans drifting toward hell like he forgot his real tribe. Never mind, no matter. We made it here together, the old timers will say, though they suck their teeth at the sight of his draws, at the sight of a renegger at their bidwiz table, at the scent of Dee Dee's too sweet macaroni and cheese. We all fall short of perfection, like memory. But Uncle Harold brings us back to where we started. Yellow perch, biting the ashen end of a line in Lake Erie's Ohio waters. The place granddaddy, wearing his old mining boots, taught generations the patience needed to stay fed. Uncle Harold will never bring the tartar sauce Cousin Kathy out east developed a taste for. He will fling back his James Brown slicked bouffant crown and howl the sound of hunting hounds choking on coal dust. Remind her she's still a West Virginia holler girl. Remind me travel ain't useful without this knowing. So we have a tradition. You saw my family keeps hair, so we're a little hair obsessed. And so back in the day when I was young, my mom used to press my hair. So she would take a comb and put it on a stove and heat it up. I know y'all are like the pain of beauty that we go through. We hope you appreciate it because it's a lot. But she would heat it up and she would take this hair dressing and she would take these gobs of like almost look like vegetable shortening and slick it on my hair and then take the pressing comb and then you hear it all the way. And so that was our tradition in addition to the cleaning Saturday morning. So I wrote this poem. This is from Mommy. Mama, hey, hey girl. Okay, it's from Mommy. Tradition. By Saturday afternoon, the stovetop needed rest, but Mama said there's no rest for the weary. By then, her hands had already pressed spatulas into skillets of sizzling bacon, cheesy scrambled eggs, and Granny Smiths softening their sour peels in a pool of butter. Oh, we from the same family. I heard that. Sorry. I had to take pause, but not together. We in the same family. Okay, you know where I'm going with that. Okay. Granny Smith softening their sour peels in a pool of butter, brown sugar, a cloud of cinnamon and nutmeg crackling. This was our tradition. Full bellies after cleaning the apartment until it reeked of Clorox bleach, until windows were Windex almost as transparent as air, but ours tinged fake pine tart as if cardboard trees hung bright green from the newly glossed wood furniture. And still her hands pressed on, untangling my 2-week-old braids, soiled with playground sweat, dandelion dust, fuzzy, wayward wisps left by an Ohio wind's kiss as I flung my blue beretted head back to predict the precise velocity my hand needed to pummel a tetherball so fast a sucker kid wouldn't have time enough to interfere with its perfect spiral, like the curled hair I longed for. Mama scratched my scalp clean with French tip nails in the kitchen sink bubbles, foaming away stories of my days she always asked about. I sat in the back of our 1987 Ford Mercury after latchkey and her long paralegal shifts. The Navy box on wheels barely putt-putted us home, exhaust letting out gunshots like black plumes of smoke. Mama pressed her foot down on the pedal to carry us to the weekend. When she cranked up the boombox loud enough to hear Mary J. Blige crooning about real love over the hairdryer, and shellacked my fro with scoops of Royal Crown Petroleum, dressing down the full shaft of my fluff, wielding the same oak barrel pressing comb my grandmama heated on top of the old coal stove in her mining camp shack, telling my mama, as my mama tells me now, to hold down my ear when she hovers near, so scorching grass teeth don't take a bite of my barely worn skin. So I'm going to read 2 more poems. So this poem, okay, y'all, I really love y'all, right? Because this is a new poem, and reading new poems is a little vulnerable. So this is a new poem. Also, I guess it's having its world debut because this is the poem that won that prize Lauren was talking about. This is that poem. So I collect oral histories from my family. My aunt was telling me this story about how our grandparents used to make them wear the same shoes all the time because unlike, many of us privileged folks, like if we have a little speck on the shoe, we want to buy a new one. We don't want to repair it. We don't want to, patch it up. We don't want to clean it. And so she talked about how she had to wear these ugly shoes for years and years and years and hated it so much that she tried to burn them. But something else happened instead. So that's this poem, okay? And this is in the voice of my aunt, so there's a little dialect in there for you. Shoes. Bluefield, West Virginia, 1961. First time I watched my sister set a fire. She's 12 and I was 8. Mama and Daddy leave for a card party, which means Rosie and Billy flee for their secret flames, which mean the middle kids, Harold and Velma and Lois, ain't too far behind them spying. Foot knowledge can learn you faster than books. Dirt and rock and branch and bush be as kindred as kin. Then the house empty of all our beloveds, and it's just my sister and me. My sister and her school saddle shoes, which she did not love. They ain't had no scuffs, but brown specks caked them like dirty powdered sugar. Tin white leather, pea yellow lye could never make clean. My sister say her shoes too ugly to be redeemed. She say redeemed, like it cost $5 whole. Slow and careful, like mama putting milk and butter and bacon and bread on a count at the company store. Hoping Daddy tagged enough coal cars, hauling loads large enough to break even. Being that she had reached for that word and found she could afford it, my sister tried to free herself from 3 years of ugly Dublin living. 3 years of wearing the same shoes to school since our folks would not replace what they could repair. She sees what she sized up as her only chance to waste leftovers. First, I thought she was kindling the stove's coal and wood chips to warm up pintos from last night's supper. But when heat hovered, hot as a piss spirit, a horseshoe doorway couldn't keep away. When a hankering for new shoes flickered in her peepers like a just struck match. By the time I noticed her knowing strike, aha, lightning fast. It was too late to redeem her. The stink of melting skin and rubber burned through our kitchen. A groan slid slow and careful, like it was calculating a bill that ain't add up. Burner plate lid lifted, lard slathered leather. The fiery tongue tested and still clutched in her blistered fingertips, my sister's disbelieving. Yeah, so she burned herself and not you. Y'all find that. Okay. Last poem. So this is a little bit of a longer one, so we're gonna roll with it. And Megan, I appreciate you. Megan is gonna cue up some photos. Can y'all see?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I was interested in was how my family moved from tobacco fields of Virginia to coal mine in West Virginia to Ohio, where I was ultimately born. And so I have these series of Exodus poems that are tracing elements of that migration with oral history components as well as documents. And so this, the thing that I have to cue up here, this is the thing. Sometimes you start to do research, and I don't want to get too woo-woo on y'all, but sometimes you start to do research, and the spirits of the folk will come make sure that you have what you need. When you see about them, sometimes they'll see about you too, right? And so I was trying to figure out more information about this coal camp where my family lived in the 40s. They kept calling it Gillum Coal Camp, Gillum Coal Camp. And I kept looking for Gillum Coal Camp and I couldn't find it anywhere. Why? Duh, because they pronounce everything in their version of the alphabet. And so it was actually spelled Gilliam, Gilliam. And 2 a.m. one morning, I was just click-clacking on the National Archives website. And to my great surprise, I discovered a whole host of photographs from the coal camp where my family lived in tiny, tiny, tiny speck, West Virginia, at the exact time that they lived there. And more surprising, which you'll see later in this collection, was a photograph that featured my aunt in the company store. And I showed it to my elders, and people, they jumped. Because at that time, you're working every day trying to live. And oftentimes, people felt like their lives did not matter, right? And so to see a family in nowhere, quote unquote, coal camp, West Virginia in the 40s, and you see yourself reflected in the National Archives was truly amazing. And I was able to use those photographs to call more interviews. And so as I used them as a visual kind of element, people stopped talking in the present tense or in the past tense and started talking in the present tense. So they started saying, oh yeah, and around there, that's such and such, and that's so and so. It's an amazing tool, and I'm so grateful that I was able to find it. So, okay, one glass of water, one go, and then we're gonna be done. Okay. Oh, and one other note. The other thing you'll see in this, as I was doing this research, was I started learning about insurance policies that people had on enslaved folk. And that is another kind of way of documenting labor that shows up in this piece. Okay. All right, here we go. Begins with the epigraph. Exodus, Gillum Coal Camp, West Virginia, 1949. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Martha, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Aretha Franklin. On the day before Junior Mary graduated high school, she told her mother, Mary, she wanted to serve and protect. Not in a maid's or nanny's uniform, but in army greens. At 17, she wanted to witness something other than coal and dirt and mountains and trees. Something as infinite as water surrounding them islands she had seen in her mama's Lifetime magazines. God's green earth, not besmirched by dark dust, dark rocks awakened from millennia of rest by explosives. The ocean's cerulean gloss sparkled like a sequin dress Junior Mary sought to slink in. She imagined the water's cool kiss pecking her skin. How free it must be to float and not feel your own heavy labor, a body beyond debt, a mind without worry. She imagined the security of military wages that didn't nickel and dime you like coal bosses did. A fee for electricity, a fee for fuel coal, a fee for doctor's visits, a fee for blacksmiths to maintain the sharpness of metal picks, a fee for oil to put in a miner's lamp, deductions subtracted from every payday, leaving you in the red or with meager balances. She did the math, gave her mama enlistment papers to sign. But Mary did not weep. The family had had enough domestic work. The military wasn't no different. He'd still be cleaning up some white folks' messes, Big Mary had said. The army wasn't no place for a black woman. After all, Truman had just let women in last year. How a black woman gonna protect a country that ain't never cared about her years of service? The many generations of black women who worked without pay until they were dishonorably discharged into soil. At least in these hills, everybody knew who the white devil was. The coal companies, lust for money, traded for breath. Just like them slave time body snatchers who smuggled cadavers, drenched them in whiskey for preservation to be used by medical schools. The black body always traded in a black market, always a price, the only thing named, attached to the toe. Round these hills, everybody came out black and poor after a day's work. You could call a mountain, a spade a spade. Your faith might convict you to say move, and you might could see some version of the Red Sea parting your troubles with a lucky lotto pick. You knew you could sit anywhere on the bus Mr. Dick Arnold drove from coal camp to coal camp, that you could stand in the same line as white folks at the company store, where y'all all bought the same milk jugs and coffee tins for the same price, which would be deducted from weekly wages if put on credit or paid for by script, all of which replenished that devil's coffers again. At least in these hills, you could holler when the fire broke out and trust somebody would hear your screams. Watch neighbors dash for ladders past well bucket water, from one man down a line to the next. Put out the threat with dozens of hands, dozens of mouths crying out to the God of Moses, the staff of their tongues parting flame from wood, smoke curling up nostrils like frankincense or some other burnt offering of praise for that half of roof that could be saved. At least on that night when the gas lamp wick lit Big Mary's cotton drapes and made ashes of the pale pink roses patterned upon them, Big Mary did not weep, for she knowed the pride of an honest day and the sorrow went into. Another day's journey when somebody ain't turned up dead was something to give thanks for. When a girl barely old enough to sign her own wedding papers ain't made a widow like Martha, staring off at the tipple, expecting to see her man there by the rail car that jarred back to the present when she hits coal, pinging the metal containers like rain, like the fat, wet blanket that made dirt slick and muddy a bad sign. The girl had told her man, begged her man to stay home on what was his last day on earth. And like a man fixing to feed his family, he did not listen. And now he was in the earth, buried deep inside Earth's muddy pocket, tucked away and maybe rocked in the rocks that swung low and carried him home in that old shiny chariot that did not drown in the Red Sea? At least in these hills, death had an address, and if you listened hard enough, looked for the signs and dreams, it rarely could put the sneak on you. But Junior Mary ain't want her mama's at least. She wanted the most, the brightest city lights that couldn't be snuffed out by a poor mouth exhaling what little air had been waiting in dim hallways of blackened lungs, rattling like an old car engine that can't turn over, can't do nothing but whir and whine and grind and click. The bad starter of it all, the bad start for which there is no replacement part. Just chains of title, chains of parents bought and sold, bought and resold. Souls were out by the wear and tear. Their bodies counted as coins in accountants' books and insured and policies you still can find online by typing words like Slavery Era Insurance Registry, California, or Aetna Slave Insurance, or Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance on slaves, or U.S. Life Insurance on slaves, or you might discover another Martha, age 14, a house girl valued at $1,000, or Ann, age 15, a house girl valued at $1,000, or Amanda, age 15, valued at $1,000, or Henry, a blacksmith, age 19, valued at $1,200 on January 13, 1860, when Charles Meyer, the slaveholder, bought himself some insurance on who he thought he owned for a term of 2 months, and the insurance agent, David Bishop, added a handwritten note that Aetna would not be liable for any consequences arising from smallpox or exposure to the same arriving to any of the above-mentioned slaves who had not been vaccinated, should they be moved from Missouri to the South by steamboat during the policy's term, because black folks always get forced to migrate for white men's enterprises, and rarely do we call those enterprises what they are, blood banking, because a black person always loses their life from that exposure. The deadly accruals in arriving to any place without consequences, without a claim to your one and only life. Your balance sheet constantly in the red, indebted to a system that hangs freedom like bait from a rod that spoiled the child into thinking what they could be spared from, on something as flimsy as freedom papers and a new address, on something as flimsy as enlistment papers and a new address. But I'm digressing now. Junior Mary ain't know all that. Still, perhaps her bones quaked with all her ancestors' bodies, the body's inheritance, all the molecules that give instruction, messages rising up on silken arm hairs like goose pimples, beloveds whispering as they do to flesh, telling her to let Pharaoh's coal go, to flee the dirt roads as black as the night sky, as blue-black as Big Mary's heart would be in the morning when she found the note left by the old coal stove. Mary, Velma, Mama, I'm leaving on a bus with Martha to Ohio. They got more opportunities up there, and she got an aunt we can stay with. Don't be mad. Love you. Mary wept. Thank you.
Renee, y'all, did we get somebody amazing here at JMU, or did we? Thank you, reading. This is, you know, a university, so we're going to make you ask questions. So there will be a Q&A. We also encourage folks online to pop your questions in the chat, and we'll ask them. I know you're going to need a second to think, so I'm going to just ramble at you a little bit, just buy you some time. I'm going to say that next semester we also have some amazing poets coming to campus in February on the 17th, and Norvesi Phillip. In March, we have Mervyn Taylor. E.B. Shockley is judging the Furious Flower Poetry Prize, and the prize winners and the judge will be reading here. So we have an amazing lineup ahead for you. Social media us to find out and more details. I know I'm just going to say that from now on. For more details and to keep posted on what's all happening at the Furious Flower Poetry Center for more amazing readings like tonight's. And so, questions? We're going to bring Elle back to the...
Oh, yeah. I forgot that part.
Al, I'd love to know what you're working on right now.
Furious Flower Poetry Center.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. Online audience, the question was, what are you working on now? Furious Flower Poetry Center is what I'm working on now. But I am hoping to take a little bit of time over winter break, look back at the manuscript and make some tweaks and some edits. I have some kind of like poems that I think fill in some gaps in the manuscript that I just want to get to and then send it into the world. Thank you. Any other questions? Bless.
When you said Exodus poems, does that mean there's a series of them in the book?
Yeah. So right now there's 3, 4 now. So I'm looking at how my family left from Virginia to West Virginia. So my hypothesis, which I found through some research, is that there were labor agents that would travel to different train stations and travel to Ellis Island and different places and meet immigrants there and say, you need a job, you need a place to live, you need some food, just take this ticket and go to this coal camp and we got you. And so they also did that kind of work, tobacco farms in Virginia. And so my kind of creative hypothesis is that this ancestor was the one person who decided to leave Virginia for a better life, but as one of the characters in my poem says, traded one kind of dirt for another and moved to West Virginia. And that's where the break in my family happened. That one person's decision determined a whole line of people. So that's the first Exodus poem. Then the West Virginia poem was my aunt who made the decision to leave coal country, go to Ohio because they had more opportunities and got the family to come initially over time. And then I have my own Exodus poem from being in Ohio and then deciding to go to undergrad in Virginia. And so I kind of complete this kind of loop. Roanoke got me because they sent me, I don't know if they still do this with y'all, but they sent me an application with free postage. And I was like, they must got some money. So I applied and the rest is history. So yeah. Thank you. Yes?
What helps you decide like line structure in your poems? Like what helps you figure out which your line breaks, your stanza breaks? What helps you decide?
Oh, okay. The question was what helps me decide line breaks and stanza breaks. So I'm a poet who's led by sound. I'm very much led by breath, and like I talk to my students about this, what I call mouth feel, the way like you hold language in your mouth and what feels crunchy and what feels smooth and silky and what are the beats. Like I'm very led by music. So for me, I might start with a line and I keep saying it and I start to hear like a rhythm without the words yet, if that makes sense. And then I start reaching for the words and it starts to just kind of tumble. That's the best case scenario. Other times I'll just take my phone. Other thing I tell my students, y'all have like the recording function on your phone. When you're somewhere, I mean, I walked around this campus and y'all say some crazy, I mean, crazy, but also like good lines. I'm like, ooh, I was standing in line at the Starbucks and you just told your whole life, let me just Jot that down. I'm so serious. I have an archive of lines that I've overheard. I don't want to sound like a creeper, but I've overheard. It was in public space. It's okay. But I've overheard people saying, and so I've kept those. And then sometimes when I'm stuck, what I will do is I'll say, okay, Ella, you're not writing today. You're quilting. You're quilting today. So I'll take those bits of language and I'll do that. And then I'll start to hear patterns sometimes. And sometimes, you know, you just blow up what you think a poem wants to be and you ask it. You ask it, who do you want to be? Where do you need to breathe? And it will tell you, it tells me. I hope that's helpful. That's a good question. That's a hard question. Line breaks. Anybody else? Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those poems. Those were lovely. And I know you said, you know, obviously a lot of them deal with like hard and really emotionally heavy things. So when it comes to like writing poems that perhaps are very difficult, how do you practice self-care? How do you navigate like leaning into that emotion, but then also recognizing what you need?
That is a whole, we have to have a whole nother, that's a whole other thing that I think is really important. The question was, how do you take care of yourself when you're writing about those hard poems? And so a thing that I had to learn from a really talented poet who told me, you should not be breaking yourself down to write a poem. You should not be flogging yourself to get words on a page. If you are that close to that feeling at the time, take a step back, right? But I think the other thing about like writing about trauma or writing through trauma is, for me, what I call spiritual practices. And so what that might mean is I'm writing about something that's very hard and I have to remind myself that I'm still in my body in the present. And so I will take a lot of breaths and then sometimes I'll hold myself and I'll say, you're alive and you're right here. You're alive and you're right here. You're alive and you're right here. Right? And kind of like, almost like self-soothe a little bit, but it's like my ear has to hear the affirmation. I have to hear it. And then I believe in a sensory, like poets live through the world through their senses, sensory things, like what I call ritual baths, like take you some Epsom salt, turn on some beautiful music, put a candle, drink water unless you're over the age of 21, and just like feel yourself in your body in a place. That's helpful. Going outside and taking walks and just getting up and shaking it out is helpful. Sometimes a random dance party in the kitchen, that does a thing. But I think most of all is having support. Like just knowing when you're doing that work that you're not doing it alone, that there are other people, whether they're in your actual like real life space or that you can cultivate in community online and ask other people what they do. Like everything I just told you, all that wasn't for me. I got that from talking to other people in community and saying, how do I write this thing, right? But then also, how is the thing that I'm writing serving? I don't want to just reenact the trauma, right? What is it doing? Sometimes the stuff that we need to write is for ourselves and it's not for sharing. And then you'll get that one poem that's like, put me in the world. And then you are scared and you do. Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
We have 3 questions online.
Oh, jeez.
So the first one is, what helps you shake feelings of inadequacy as a writer?
Woo! I'm still working on that. Still shaking. I don't think that will ever go away from me. I think what I have to remind myself without getting too woo-woo, but I'm gonna get woo-woo, is that I feel very much that my practice is a part of my purpose. When you start to feel like, for me at least, I felt like my work was in alignment with why I'm here, like in the flesh. And that's something I have to remind myself. Even if I'm not great at it, or I feel like, oh, that was a crappy poem, or oh, that thing was terrible. It's like, but are you doing the work that you were here to do? Are you serving the people that somebody told you to serve? And for me, if I'm doing that, then I'm okay. So that's how I do that. I think about not just me, but what is the usefulness of whatever gifting that I have? How is it going to help other people? So then it becomes less about me and all my and becomes more about, like, can it move some feeling in people? Yeah, that's how I handle it.
They responded that they agree with that and understand.
But
The second question is, how do you reconnect with the poet inside to keep going?
I think there's seasons. Here's the thing that I'll say about that, because I feel like I used to feel like if you're not writing every day, you're not a writer. That was a thing that I was told very early on in my writing journey, and that's I won't use a colorful word, but that's not true. Everyone has to find their practice, right? And so for some people, like, I'm teaching, I'm administrating, I'm working in community. I have multiple, I'm an octopus with all the things, tentacles, that word. So I have to understand that, like, my making is part of that, but I'm not in a position where that's the only part of that. So in acknowledging that to myself, then I create moments where I can lean into that tentacle. So maybe that's for a week, and maybe that week comes every 2 months or every 3 months, and I just make the most of that week. But I think we have to think about what works best for ourselves and what's true for our lives. Everyone is not in an MFA program. Everyone is not, like, working in academia with summers off. Like, people are trying to survive and take care of families and loved ones and elders. So take the space when you can. I mean, Gwendolyn Brooks, she had kids. Like, she's Gwendolyn Brooks. Like, we can do this, but we have to kind of not compare our journeys to other people's journeys. Yeah.
The last online question is, what do you do when you feel like no one's listening?
I shout. I shout. I didn't read this poem because I wasn't sure if I could do it tonight. Maybe another day. But I sing. I think hearing a sound that's not my own words, but just, like, hearing sound through, like, the column of my body moves things for me. So I sing a lot, in shower, in the car, sometimes humming to myself, walking around here, and that helps me. I think it's also important to have a therapist. I don't have one yet in Harrisonburg, but she's working on it. I think it's really important when you're doing any kind of making, whether it's writing, visual arts, music, whatever that is. Oftentimes you are set aside from, like, the people that you, like, your family. Like, you might be the weird one doing that thing that nobody understands what it is that you do, right? And so sometimes you can feel like you're in it by yourself. And so to process things and to feel like, again, like, I'm not alone trying to do this work is helpful. And sometimes we don't have enough persistence on our own to do that. We need another human to be like, Elle, you are okay. You are here. You are doing it, girl. Like, drink some water. And that's helpful. So, therapy. Yeah.
Any final questions? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Hey. Ooh, from the mouth of babes.
Do I ever feel like I can't do it? Yeah, I didn't feel like I could do this today. Yeah, I feel like I can't do it very frequently. But then if you don't show up for the things that you have gifts in, then there are people who may not be able to hear your wonderful gift. I had a mentor who once told me that there are people depending on you to stay true to what you are doing that you have not yet met and that you will never meet. And what happens if you make the decision, oh, I'm scared, or I don't want to do it, or I feel badly, and then you aren't able to make that impact on people who are waiting for you to do the thing that only you can do, right? So that really got me all tingly, and I was like, okay, I'll do the girl. But it was a reminder that sometimes people need models. They need you to show up with your book and your question and remind them to keep doing things when they're afraid. So thank you.
Please check out Fierce Flower online, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and where else? Snapchat. We are snapping the chats, and really just, we are here and we do stuff all the time, all sorts of things, so check us out, and thank you again for being here this evening.
Nice.